What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Week 14 NFL Power Rankings. Can't believe that we have just another month of these left. We are in a total home stretch, exciting playoff push for a lot of teams. Really exciting storylines to talk about this week, so I'm looking forward to the episode this week. Before we hop in, please do hit that like button down below. If you enjoy the series and want to support the channel, that's the easiest way to do it right there. Appreciate you in advance. Really helps me out hitting that like button down below. All right, starting at the bottom, actually a new team down there this week, the Cincinnati Bengals, showing why they got the number one pick in last year's draft. You rip Joe Burrow out of here and you are left with the worst team in the NFL. Yes, even more so than the winless New York Jets. These are not standings, they are power rankings. And if the Bengals, the way they're playing right now, played the New York Jets, I think the Jets would be 2, 3, 4-point favorites. The Jets are at least somewhat competitive right now. Obviously, the, collapse against the Raiders this week, though Greg Williams kind of saved their ass by being Greg Williams. But anyway, this is about the Bengals. This offensive line, it's not overstated how bad it truly is. No Jonah Williams in there this week, at least in the second half. And then when he came out, oh my God, it got so much worse. This team has work to do on the offensive line for Joe Burrow heading into next year. So again, if the Bengals played anyone on this list this week, they would be underdogs, home or away. And then, the Jets climbing up a spot. It is what it is. These two teams are in a tier of their own at the bottom. But to me, the Jets are just more competitive. Darnold continues to be Darnold. He's got those bad turnover-worthy mistakes, but actually made some nice plays in this game against the Raiders. Was a big reason they were in it so much. Quinnen Williams also emerging as a premier defensive player. Like, he has been awesome over the last month of the season. Former top 3 pick on that defensive line. So they got some things going for them. Maybe a more appealing head coaching position with Trevor Lawrence likely coming in here than a lot of people realize. It's just a matter of the working for this ownership that is bottom 3 in the league as far as ownership that you want to work for. So, a cluster at the bottom there, true trash between the Jets and the Bengals. And then this next tier is just moderate trash. Teams that are pretty easy wins, but you at least have to come out and play if you want to beat them. So that's going to start with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Very little to add here. They continue to be a team that can move the ball. They got some pretty fluky plays this week with a tipped interception that resulted in a touchdown for Laviska Shenault, pick 6 on a play where Dalvin Cook didn't look back for the football, so that made that score a little closer than you would expect and why it went into overtime. They really were not all that competitive against the Vikings other than those 2 plays that really helped them out. So the Jags, who have lost 13 straight, 12 straight, whatever, they're fine. Stand put at 30. Then the Philadelphia Eagles, again, not competitive this week, looking like the worst offense in the entire league, which is just insane. It is such an embarrassment for, to me, Doug Peterson first and then Carson Wentz. Both are absolutely to blame. You could even say it's close to 50-50, but it went back to last year with Doug Peterson. The play calling is just a mess. This team has no identity, no scheme, no feel for who they are. They aren't prepared. That is on the coach, not the quarterback, and that is going to hurt the quarterback. But Carson Wentz has been pretty miserable. Bad mistakes, interceptions, missed throws, bad accuracy, bad mechanics, all of it. This has just been a colossal collapse of a team that was regarded as a team like the Kansas City Chiefs today as a potential future dynasty with the coach-quarterback combination. And it's just completely disappeared. So I talked about them on the Fully Inflated Football podcast last week about how you got to fire Doug Peterson here. And I've lost a lot of respect for this organization already, but if you don't take a look in the mirror and fire Doug with the candidates we have ahead of us right now, that's a big mistake for the Eagles because Doug Peterson is not it. But you bench Carson Wentz, like I said on the podcast last week, see what you have in Hurts. If he plays well, you maybe evaluate the Carson Wentz situation. If he doesn't, you very likely bring him back, and he's got that massive contract. I don't see a trade making sense for the Eagles. There's lots of Wentz trade talk. So lots to figure out with the Eagles moving forward, but I think in reality, Hurts probably doesn't kickstart this offense that is, in my opinion, the worst coached offense in the league, even more than the Adam Gase coached offense. And this team is probably running it back with Wentz, and you would hope a new coach next year, but Regardless, that's enough time to spend on the Eagles. Let's talk about the other terribly coached NFC East team in the Dallas Cowboys, staying put at 28. More of the same for this Cowboys team. Yet another Mike McCarthy defense that has no idea how to play football. A team that showed some promise, then the second McCarthy becomes their head coach, they forget all technique, fundamentals, discipline, and forget how to football. And then offensively, pretty much the same thing with the Eagles. No scheme, no identity, really no excuse for a team with the receivers they have and a quarterback in Andy Dalton who's won a lot of games in this league, played at a very high level, to look as lackluster and uninspired and just as lost as they have. I'm not saying they should be an elite offense with a bad offensive line in Andy Dalton, but man, it's just been ugly here. And to be honest, Dalton wasn't even that bad this week against the Ravens. But yeah, the Cowboys, Eagles, just hot trash. And then the Denver Broncos at the top of this bottom trash tier. They're at least in this tier because of all the injuries. I have a lot of respect for Vic Fangio, what he's done for this defense that is under the radar, scrappy and solid. The front seven is loaded with guys like Malik Reed, Draymond Jones, Josie Jewell, like guys that most NFL fans just don't know who they aren't aware of, are playing at really nice, like starting caliber levels and been good role players for them. So the Broncos are solid. They hung in there with the Chiefs. But again, Drew Lock just not really the answer to me. He's got the upside, sure, but how long do you want to sit around and wait for that to maybe show through? I would be looking for a quarterback sooner rather than later. Nothing's changed there. All right, so now we have a tier gap up. Starting to get into some more interesting teams here, but that list of interesting teams is not going to start yet. We got the Chicago Bears at number 26, so -5 here for the Bears. I mean, man, you go back to like week 6, week 7, myself, other analysts, many NFL fans were calling out that this team was quite possibly the most fraudulent 5-1 team in not maybe NFL history, but in recent NFL history. Because anyone with the eyeballs of a human being could watch this team and say, yeah, that's not a good football team. They can't move the ball on offense. And sure enough, week after week after week, the defense gets exhausted, having to be on the field, 60, 70% of the game. The offense, 3 and outs, turnovers. And here we are. They've lost 6 in a row. Now, this week, the offense actually, ironically, played pretty well. And the defense is starting to not look so great the last couple weeks. So the Bears are in a really tough spot. They have some extremely difficult decisions to make as far as the coach, quarterback, all of the veteran guys on this roster. Lots of tough decisions to make. What kind of direction do they go? So Bears -5 at 26. And then the Detroit Lions, who they played this week, +1. Matthew Stafford, another name with Carson Wentz that's out there in the quarterback trade market potential conversation. Honestly, I don't think Stafford or Wentz will be on the move. Stafford especially, I just don't think that with the way he's playing and the way he played here against the Bears, and I think he'll be pretty solid down the stretch, especially if he can get Kenny Golladay back in there. That's just not a quarterback that you move on after you draft, the 3rd, 4th best quarterback in a class? No, I'm not saying they don't draft a quarterback necessarily, but you don't make him an instant starter and just dish out Stafford. So I do think Stafford is the week 1 starter of the Detroit Lions next year under a new coaching regime. He was really spectacular here against the Bears. So number 24 is going to be the San Francisco 49ers. Still, to me, one of the best coached teams in the league. Shanahan magically gets this offense to work with Nick Mullins, but it just wasn't enough with how this defense played against the Bills. And that was kind of where this team was gaining momentum, was not that this defense was becoming elite, but they were getting back to being that extremely fast, well-coached unit under Robert Saleh, who was going to keep the score down enough for Shanahan to run his Shanahanigans and keep this team in games and win a lot of games. And that just was not evident at all on Monday night against the Bills. I mean, no pass rush at all. They missed Bosa so bad. And yeah, they just were letting Josh Allen get away with murder out there. So really alarming game for the Niners. Also hurts that they are out of the playoff race now. I think that's always demoralizing for a team. You probably don't bring Garoppolo back and Kittle back if you've got injury risk there. So kind of just an axe on the Niners season. The NFC is celebrating about that because the Niners were starting to look scary there for a couple weeks. defending NFC champs. No one really wanted to play a hot Niners team. Well, NFC doesn't have to worry about that now. Niners can start to look forward to the offseason at this point. Then the Houston Texans at 23, going to stay put. They're the same Texans I've been preaching here for the last 4 or 5 weeks. Now, it's become very evident to me that Deshaun Watson is the 4th best quarterback in the league. I'm kind of bummed at myself for backing off of that because it's not like Watson's played bad this year, and that's where I had him coming in the year. So we're back to that where he's kind of in this tier of his own. He's not necessarily elite because of the lack of playoff success and week-to-week consistency, but that week-to-week consistency is starting to show up, and he's starting to kind of inch back up towards maybe Russell Wilson a little bit. So he's still kind of in that tier as I had him heading into the year as not elite, but better than the other options, 5 through 11 or whatever. So Watson, just such an appealing player for any head coach candidate to come in and work with. And even though they don't have cap space, they don't have high first-round picks, I wouldn't be surprised if you see, whether it's Dable or Bieniemy, whoever ends up being the first coach hired, going with the Texans because you get that, I almost said it, but let's just say you get that high-end franchise quarterback, maybe an elite quarterback in Deshaun Watson. All right, then we have the next 2 teams here, 2 of, I think, 3 really controversial rankings this week. And it's going to be the Washington football team and the New York Giants. So let's talk about these individually now that I've spoiled who the next 2 teams are, to not mix them together because they have similar narratives but very different football teams. So let's start with the football team at number 22. And don't get me wrong, this is the ultimate all-time, how can you not root for these guys' team? I mean, you have Ron Rivera, who has come back from cancer, and Alex Smith, who is the lock comeback player of the year with one of the most gruesome injuries in sports history, coming back from that and playing at a decent level. Now, they are ranked here at 22 because that is what they are. They are at a Cinderella, chip on your shoulder, why not us team. They are not an actually talented football team. Now, they've found some pieces here. They've scrapped their way out of irrelevance and found players at spots that they needed, right? They've gotten the D-line healthy. They're getting after the quarterback better. That was supposed to be their strength coming in. It's a strength now. They've got Cam Sims playing well, Logan Thomas. They're finding some playmakers on offense. They've found some stability with Alex Smith as a bottom 6 or 7 starter in the league, but he's game managing their way, and with the defense playing the way they are, it's going to be a formula for them to maybe win every week. But that's what this team is. If they're going to win, it's going to be 20-17. They got to play some of the better offenses in the league. They're toast. They can't keep pace with the majority of the top 12 offenses in the league. Unfortunately for the Steelers, right now they are not playing like that on offense. So the Washington football team is 22. There's going to be some disagreement because they're this big storyline. They're coming off an upset win, but it's an upset for a reason. It's called an upset for a reason. The football team is not a better team than the Steelers. They're not a better team than the guys I'm ranking above them. They did have a big win this week and have an opportunity to prove me wrong moving forward. And that all very much applies to the New York Giants, though the reason I rank the Giants above the football team is I think they're going to get Daniel Jones back here, if not this week, very soon. And with Jones out there, I just see them as a much higher upside team. Not only with the quarterback position with Daniel Jones, who even at his worst is a better player than Alex Smith, but was actually playing really good football before the injury, which is a little bit exciting. But they also have playmakers. They have Evan Ingram. They have Shepard and Tate and Slayton. Like, they have some guys that can move the ball on offense and a defense that is playing lights out and stunning me this year, because they don't have a ton of talent on defense, but they are just playing together and smart and cohesive in year one. It's really impressive to see what the Giants are doing. So there's your NFC East breakdown. Honestly, I think the football team probably wins the division because their schedule is easier, but don't lose sight of the fact that these are 2 5-win teams with a severe lack of talent, frankly, on both sides of the ball. That's not fair. The football team is a really good defense, but at the end of the day, these are average football teams that one of them is going to make the playoffs because of their division. But anyway, let's keep moving. There's going to be some disagreement on these next 3 teams because of, the last 2 teams we talked about are actually playoff teams. But if they played the Falcons here at 20, the Chargers here at 19, or the Panthers here at 18, I think these three teams that I just named would be favored over the Giants or the football team. So let's go through those. The Falcons at 20, dropping down 2 spots. I mean, just a frustrating win. This is identical to what the Falcons were last year. They're coming off a week where they just beat the Raiders 43-3 or whatever. So they're just a very inconsistent week-to-week team. Matt Ryan, man, I am holding back so hard from calling him like one of the most overrated players ever. Like, God, he is just so remarkably above average at quarterback, but the week-to-week consistency is just not there. He has no actual elite traits as a passer to lean on when things don't go his way. Everything has to be perfect for him to light up the scoreboard, and then he lights up the scoreboard. So the Falcons, a rough week here, really struggling to move the ball against the Saints. They're going to turn around at some point in the next 2 or 3 weeks and have a big win. That's why they're here at 20. They still have some talent on offense. They've played better on defense, but a really frustrating loss for the Falcons this week. Then you get the Chargers at 19. This one I really have to defend, and it really comes down to me not looking at the win-loss record here. It comes down to if they played any of the teams behind them, I think they would be favored. I mean, they can really move the ball on offense. You got Bosa and some playmakers on defense. Like, this is a good football team. They were favored against the Patriots. Keep that in mind. The problem is they're just terribly coached, and at any moment, they could fall apart inside a given game. Now, recency bias is going to really hate this 19th ranking, but do keep in mind, I mean, that was an all-time tragic special teams performance. And while I agree the Chargers special teams is all-time tragic on the season, you're not going to get a game like that where every time the special teams takes the field, it feels like they're giving the Patriots points. The Patriots won that game with 90 passing yards. You also have the matchup of Belichick becoming just a genius against rookie quarterbacks at this point. I mean, there's few things more consistent in football than Belichick just taking a dump on a rookie quarterback like Justin Herbert. So just a rough week for the Chargers, and maybe it is time to drop them down, but as we sit here today, if they played the Falcons, the Giants, the football team, I do think they would still be favored. Same thing for the Panthers. They were on bye this week. We're getting a little long, and honestly, good offense, young defense, not much new to really say about the Panthers. They're a very competitive football team, moving up, benefiting from some of the Chargers and Falcons' woes here. Okay, now we get to talk about this next tier grouping, which is, I think, the most exciting tier group I've talked about in these power rankings all year. Both in the NFC and AFC, we have a super intriguing playoff push. So all of these teams, really important to rank kind of where they stand, who the best teams are as we approach the playoffs here. So this next tier grouping are all playoff contenders, but teams that I think would more likely than not fall short in terms of could they actually win a Super Bowl, which, keep in mind, these teams aren't getting that 1 seed, so you need 4 straight weeks of playoff football to win a Super Bowl here, and I just don't think any of these next 9 teams could give you those 4 straight weeks for a variety of reasons. And I'm going to try to detail those reasons. So the New England Patriots at number 17 here, yes, a dominating win over the Chargers, but they got a ton of special teams play. At the end of the day, this is still a bad offense. There's people that are going to defend Cam Newton till his grave. I just don't think he's a very good quarterback. Never have been all that high on him, but especially now. And with the lack of receiving talent doesn't help either, but this is just not an explosive offense. They won 45-0. Cam Newton didn't even have 100 passing yards. So they know who they are. They want to run the ball. They're going to throw slants with Cam Newton, basically. They're going to run read options, and they're going to play defense. And we know that that is just a very difficult formula to sustain success in the NFL, even when it's Bill Belichick putting together a defense like this down the stretch. So even with Tom Brady gone, you're still seeing some of those Belichick staples like getting better on defense as the season goes on and dunking on rookie quarterbacks for whatever reason. And then the Cardinals at 16, starting to look much more like the Arizona Cardinals that myself and many people projected coming into the year. They were obviously a playoff kind of sleeper hype team after the Hopkins trade with Kyler Murray, but it's just a good reminder that culture is so significant. It's not everything. Talent still matters, but man, the culture here just isn't ready. And I don't know if it's going to get there with Cliff or not. We're definitely seeing some red flags kind of all over the board, but whether it's Kyler being on the same page with a receiver on third down, or Cliff and Kyler knowing what play calls to go to in crutch situations, or the defense, safety communication with the middle linebacker, communication between the offensive line. There's different things that when they go against teams like the Patriots and the Rams, as they have the last couple weeks in meaningful December football, they're going to be at a disadvantage at a lot of those between the margins kind of nitty-gritty football details that the Cardinals just don't have at this point in time, despite how talented they are as a football team. So that's really starting to show here as they go against some pretty tough matchups. So they're still a really good football team. Kyler also is not 100%. That's hurting them. But we're losing steam on this Cardinals team, and at this point, I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs. So -4 for the Cardinals. Then the Miami Dolphins. They beat up on the worst team in football this week. Good for you. I will say Tua totally flipped a switch in the second half. I thought Tua played his best football on the season so far in the second half. First half, it was like, I didn't think he would get benched, but we had seen that before with Fitz behind there, where they kind of know that what they have in Fitzpatrick, and that was a big game for them to win, and it didn't look like they were a lock to win that thing with how Tua was playing in the first half. I will say, without taking too big of a dump on Tua, he had a absolute dime in the first half to who's the 5'7" receiver they have, Grant or whatever. He dropped an absolute dime to him, like 50 yards down the field, a throw that I didn't necessarily know Tua was capable of. So, they didn't connect on that one. That was more on Grant than Tua. So I will say that Tua should have had that. But overall, just a really good day for Tua against the Bengals. But, a day where he responded and showed some of that toughness. Mike Gesicki looks awesome. So the offense figuring some things out with Tua, and this defense is really impressive, but it was against the Bengals, so it's hard to know kind of what exactly their upside is on that side of the ball. We know they're very good. But yeah, the Dolphins look like they're going to make the playoffs. They're 8-4. They've really taken advantage of a pretty easy schedule. I see them likely as a first-round exit just because I still think there's a lack of talent. That lack of talent showed when they lost to the Broncos a couple weeks ago. But yeah, good week for the Dolphins. Then the Minnesota Vikings climbing up a spot. I kind of talked about this with the Jags. Their loss was not, or their close win in overtime against the Jags was not nearly as bad as it looked really the last 2 weeks. This Vikings team has done something that they don't traditionally do, and that is respond to adversity under Kirk Cousins. So against the Panthers, they gave up 2 strip fumble touchdowns on back-to-back plays in the second half, dug themselves in a deficit, and this offense that's proving to be extremely reliable, Justin Jefferson and Cousins and Cook, battled back and won the game. Again, adversity this week. First drive, they should have an interception. The ball gets deflected, lands in Laviska Shenault's hands. And then right before half, Kirk Cousins trying to throw a screen to Cook, and Cook isn't looking for the ball, and the linebacker finds it and runs it to the house. So there's 14 points in the first half that they weren't accounting for. And they fought back and overcame the adversity. So there's value in winning games like that. You'd like them to win those games more convincingly, but I don't think those last 2 weeks against lesser opponents are quite as bad as they look. I think the Vikings are a really scary team. I think the rest of the NFC would hate for the Vikings to get in. They're a team with experience and a lot of stars on this team. The defense is playing better. So the Vikings +1, I think they're a really scary football team right now down the stretch. Then the Las Vegas Raiders, not playing their best football right now, but I'm really not that worried about them. I think they've just kind of hit a little bit of a slump. Offensive line starting to get healthy here. I trust Gruden, I trust Carr and these playmakers to at least have a solid offense. Like, they've just shown us enough to say, okay, they've hit a little bit of a road bump. I still think it's a top 10 offense in the league. And we know this defense isn't very good. I've been saying that all year. So nothing really changed on the Raiders. Was just kind of a tough week. Big, strong comeback effort from the Jets. A couple of Henry Ruggs turnovers made this game harder than it should have looked for the Raiders. But yeah, obviously they almost lost to the Jets and they got blown up by the Falcons last week. So it's not looking great. It's weird to say that they're climbing up a spot. That's more about the Cardinals looking real bad. But I'm not overly worried about the Raiders. Now, they are in a tough spot as far as making that push for the 6 or 7 seed in the AFC, but still a really good football team, whatever happens. And then the Ravens, they're going to come down a spot here, down to 12. Simply put, they're not good on offense. They really are not. They're fine. Lamar can make some plays happen, but they're not consistent at all. Lamar is just not throwing the ball well at all. There's some really ugly moments against the Cowboys. Now he'll make the occasional play. He'll do enough. And this defense is really solid. They're not an easy team to win, and they're gonna probably, I would guess, scrap their way into a 10-win season and make the playoffs here. But just not what they were last year. It's not that hard to explain here. And lots of injuries, not helping either. Then the Tennessee Titans dropping down 2 spots, showing yet again that if they do not get those big A.J. Brown, the Derrick Henry plays, or if they fall behind, they don't have a counterpunch. Ryan Tannehill is good at what he does. He can play in rhythm. He can load up play action and hit those big plays over the middle of the field. But man, you take that away or you get out early and they have to get off script, they are not a good football team. They're very similar to the Baltimore Ravens and kind of what our criticisms of them were last year. And the defense is just not there for the Titans. They have the talent, but they just can't put it together. I'm a little surprised that Vrabel has not gotten this unit to click a little better. A little bit disappointed in Vrabel's production on that side of the ball. But yeah, the Titans are good, but tough loss there against the Browns. And they're right in the thick of things with the Colts again. But the week-to-week struggles, the boom or bust mentality of this Titans team is definitely intriguing, but also concerning. And if you want to talk about teams winning a Super Bowl, I don't see the Titans in playoff football putting together 4 straight weeks of consistent football to get that done. Then we got the Cleveland Browns climbing up 3 spots here. What a week it was for Cleveland. This is probably the most fun week for Browns fans in, 20 plus years, probably since I was born. So many things exciting here for Cleveland because Baker Mayfield looks like he's back. Like he's got that mojo back. He looks like a really solid, what do you even say? He's not like a game manager, but just like a good quarterback. Not a perfect player, but you're really happy with what you have in Baker right now. And then even more importantly, Kevin Stefanski he's been one of the best coaches in the NFL this year. This hire was just lights out. And how can you not love Stefanski's awareness to say, we got to win this game. This is a huge game. Pretty sure it's in Tennessee, right? And he brought out all the tricks, literally trick plays, like 4 of them, and they all worked. They were all called up at the perfect time. And then it was all built off of what they do well, which is outside zone, making you really have to commit to the run and hitting you off of play action. It was just a beautiful game plan, executed perfectly by everyone here. So really exciting times for Cleveland. Into the top 10 of the power rankings for the Cleveland Browns, who all but clinched a playoff spot this week. Hard to say they're a team with the upside and experience to win a Super Bowl and put together that kind of run, especially as a more run-oriented team, but they're getting back to the passing a little bit. But regardless, you're super happy and excited about the future for the Cleveland Browns. And then the Colts are going to climb up back to number 9 here. Big win over the Texans. That's a harder win than it looks to take care of Deshaun Watson and those guys. Clearly, this defense is just different with DeForest Buckner. I've said that he's not an elite player, but man, he to me is getting up there. If he's not there at that defensive tackle position, I didn't put him in the same grouping with a Chris Jones as the second best pass rushing D tackle in the league, but hard to say he's not right there next to him right now. So I will get that out of the way. They are just a better football team with DeForest Buckner on the field. That defense gets opened up with what he does up front. And then offensively, they're just kind of steady. They're going to do what they're going to do. They're going to run mesh on 3rd down, and Phillip Rivers is going to do his thing. They're still riding a pretty thin line as far as needing Rivers to play kind of flawless football as far as accuracy and throwing with that anticipation. So I don't get super excited about the offense. I just don't know if they have the upside overall to win a Super Bowl. But of all these teams, I think they are the most well-rounded team and play the most consistent football. It's just a matter of upside for the Colts. All right, now into the top 8, and this is getting interesting too. Now, these are teams, all 8 of them, that I can actually picture winning the Super Bowl, getting hot or putting together 4 steady weeks or potentially beating the Kansas City Chiefs, having the upside to do that, to take care of that job. And that's going to start with the Bucs, who are on bye this week. Not much to add there. This is a huge week for Tom Brady and these guys. They have got to get this offense on the same page. They got to get back to the lab. They got to reinvent themselves fast, but they have so much upside. It's hard not to include them here with all the talent on offense, the offensive line. This defense is one of the best in football. They just got to put it all together. Hard to really bet against Tom Brady. I've talked about his kind of limited upside as a passer, but when you have so much around him, they still have upside as a team. And then you got the Rams at number 7. They took care of the Cardinals this week. This team is very matchup dependent because they are so star heavy, and that's going to be a case for them. But man, they know who they are. Aaron Donald is the defensive player of the year. If you say something else, stop kidding yourself. And they've just put together an incredible season. Now, you're still at risk of bad Jared Goff, who shows up every 5 weeks, showing up there in the playoffs, but I feel more confident in their offense on a consistent basis than some of these other shaky offenses, I suppose. Then the Seattle Seahawks, interesting week here, losing to the Giants. The last month has not been very pretty for the Seahawks. They're trying to get back to this sort of run the ball, take shots and play action, play defense approach, and it's worked for the defense. The defense is playing so much better over the last month of the season, and I kept saying that was going to happen, but it's come at the cost of the offense losing their groove. Russell Wilson, simply put, is just out of it. He's dancing around too much in the pocket. The rhythm stuff that's been on and off throughout his career is just not there right now, and the Giants were totally onto it. The Giants were like, all right, we'll just basically cover him up outside of the pocket, not let him do crazy Russell Wilson things, and the offense had very little to go off after that. So they're showing some pretty big problems right now. Definitely not like out on the Seahawks or anything, but it's definitely starting to look a little worse here, and they got to get back to it fast. You are at least intrigued by the fact that this defense is playing a lot better. Then the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we've had them ranked second just out of the respect that they were undefeated, but I was very adamant that this was not the best team in football, that record is not everything, and that the Steelers have some pretty big problems. I've been trying to, convince Steelers fans and fight Steelers fans since week 1 that this is not an explosive offense. They are a much better version of the Chicago Bears, basically, where they are going to keep the score down. They want to play ball control offense. They're not running the ball well, so they try to do that through the quick passing game, and that can work. But if you go against teams like Baltimore and teams like the Washington football team that tackle well and don't give up those big plays due to the receivers, it's just not there on the offensive side of the ball. It's an average offense. And Big Ben is just not elevating anything here. Big Ben is fine. It's pretty funny that people wanted to put Big Ben in the MVP conversation. It just was never a reality. But at the end of the day, they're still very likely the best defense in football with the 16th best offense. So they're still a very real team, but they are losing some of that upside, especially with how the offense is playing right now. So -3 for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who really struggled against a practice squad Ravens team last week and lost to the football team this week. Then the Buffalo Bills, +2 into the top 4 for the Bills. They just keep coming at you. They hit you in so many different ways. They got 3-4 different receivers. When you get Gabriel Davis into the mix, Josh Allen is playing really solid, steady football. You'll get the occasional throw, but when they're so consistent on the other, 24 out of 25 plays, it matters less and less and less than it did in years past. They hit you with 2 different running backs. The defense is playing better. This team is really coming together. I think that they are not just a more consistent team than the Pittsburgh Steelers right now, but they also have a higher upside, because if they're in the playoffs against the Chiefs and they get a good, no mistake Josh Allen game, they can absolutely beat the Chiefs. And I don't know if I am that confident in saying that about the Steelers. And that's really what this is all about, because if you take the Chiefs out of this picture, the whole playoff picture opens up. So really exciting stuff going on in Buffalo. Then the New Orleans Saints climbing up 2 here, taking care of the Falcons. Taysom Hill looked all right this week. He looked like a guy that they can win close, low-scoring games with. And then the Packers at number 2. And this really comes down to, with a healthy Drew Brees, I think the Saints are number 2. I said last week that the Saints are the best team in the NFC with a healthy Drew Brees, but he's dealing with 11 cracked ribs, and we don't know if and when he's going to come back. So I'm going to put the Packers over the Saints with Taysom Hill. With Drew Brees, I would put the Saints over the Packers. These two are really tight. They're just playing the most consistent, steady, well-rounded football in the NFC right now. But this tier gap is a lot closer than it looks, 2 through 8. I think any of these guys could beat each other. And then you have that tier gap up to the Chiefs, the best team in football, the most well-rounded team in football with the best quarterback in football, and one of the best coaches, and the best receiver, and the best tight end, and a pretty solid defense. So there you go. There are the power rankings. Definitely got long this week, but a lot of exciting stuff to talk about. So we're going to wrap up here, guys. Please do hit that like button. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. Cheers, as always. We'll see you for the next one. Peace out.